welcome back to Inspire Fitness Academy wellbeing and team. So today we're going to talk about wellbeing and what that means to us, and in particular we're going to talk about the lockdown and the effect on isolation that we're having in the lockdown. So we've had a bit of a rocky road this year. So coronavirus hit us at the beginning of the year, and we then went into lockdown famously in March, and then we come out of lockdown in July the 26th, I think it was, when things started opening again. And then we got told to eat out to help out, and then we got told we were doing it too much and we were being naughty and not to do it as much anymore. And then we've been put back into another lockdown again. So that's kind of where we are. So I mean, Sarah, do you want to share with us your experience of lockdown and what the isolation means for you?
Yeah, I'm happy to go for first. I have to say, I think lockdown part 2 is slightly different to the first one. At the beginning, there's a lot of confusion anyway when everything started going a bit weird, and you're confused and you're trying to find your pecking order at home and trying to be resilient and adapt and things like that. And then you get into your flow and then you think, okay, I'm doing the best I can with the resources I have at the time. And then things change. And I got quite happy, I have to say, at the beginning. Once you get into your flow and you feel safe, and you're trying to take care of everybody that's around you, and you're in bubbles, and it feels safe once you get used to things. And so I do feel that when things change, it stirs the mud up again. Then you've got the media throwing in their two penneth and creating hysteria, and so this time around it feels a bit like no man's land, but for me, I've continued to just keep my spirits up, check on people that I care and love, and be resilient, and again adapt to different, more confusing limitations, I have to say. My high street, some shops seem to decide that they're necessary and others don't, but that's up to them. But I just think, I don't know, there is confusion, but I always like to think that from the darkness comes light. So I am remaining optimistic, and I think that lots of little synchronicities that we can notice on the way will pop us on the path to a better thing in the future.
It's really interesting. It's interesting that you said that you feel like you're kind of in isolation at the minute, and this no man's land that we've got going off, that kind of resonates with me, because I kind of feel like that. It's kind of like, well, are we in lockdown? Aren't we in lockdown? I look out my window and there's hordes of people going past the street. It doesn't seem as though lockdown's actually happening this time. It feels surreal when you go out to doctors or hospital or wherever, and the roads are just really busy. So I'm kind of querying what is the lockdown? What does it actually mean?
It's almost as though it's an inappropriate term that's being used, because it's nothing like the first time round, with all these exceptions in place, which of course is very confusing, and especially to the small business. So many small businesses, it just doesn't make sense that they are being targeted, which it's almost like penalizing them, when there's clearly they have got more stringent, let's say, health and safety in place than a lot of the other places would, because of the nature of their business. I'm talking hair and beauty. That very strictly regulated anyway. So it does seem very unfairly apportioned.
Yeah, which doesn't help the general public either. When businesses are doing one thing and the general public are doing the other thing, and everybody, I think it is a no man's land, and I think that people are doing it the best they can, trying to understand things as best they can and translating it in their own way of coping, I guess, with all. I mean, there is a silver lining to COVID, if I may add, that because I like to think that there's a silver lining in everything. That it has brought us closer together, humanity. Most of it in good ways. There are negative aspects of it as well, but it is a bit of a wake-up call. And yes, I think it's helping our progress, albeit it seems messy. I think we can get through the mud and come out of it happier and healthier.
The thing that I struggle to comprehend is I've got 2 children that live at home, and they go out to school during the day and they're mixing with all their friends, and then after school they're no longer allowed to mix with their friends. And then they come into our house, my children come into my house, and they've been mixing with all kinds of different people all day. That's the one thing that I can't quite grasp. I can't get my head around it. I don't know whether they'd have called it lockdown light or something different. I don't know. But there seems to be a lot of shops open, because I'm still going out for me runs on a daily basis, and there seems to be more people walking the streets. I don't know if that's just a reflection of mine. I mean, Rose, talk to us about how it's affecting you.
Well, I thought the entire experience was really interesting. I live in shared houses, so I think there was a lot more. Isolation was a bit different to what I think you would experience in a family home when you have your parents or children and like siblings around. I had my brother with me, but it's still, I think, with shared houses, you do tend to get stuck in your bedroom quite a lot, and I think that's quite common for a lot of students in shared houses unless they know each other. And I do agree with like what you brought up about your kids going to school, because I do have friends who still go to university and they meet people there, but then they come home. And like, for example, my brother goes to lectures and a few other friends of mine do, and then they mingle there, but then they come home when we're supposed to be, in lockdown. I mean, the biggest thing for me was obviously aside from the isolation that arises because of lockdown, there are also added fears because coronavirus isn't normal, and it's completely okay to feel overwhelmed by a pandemic that has killed so many people. And I think it also brings up like that question of mortality and what, like, it makes you feel kind of at risk more than you would normally, especially as someone young or a university student or a young person. You don't really think about that at all, and you're forced to suddenly because of this. And you also have to deal with a lot of uncertainty. When we talk about small businesses, also, what kind of future are we looking at with all the money that's going into the economy to keep it afloat? The debts that we're going to probably deal with in the next 2 to 3 years as a repercussion, as a consequence of what we're doing now, it's going to affect the young people the most. And I know a lot of my friends have lost jobs and stuff, because people tend to, at this age, be a little bit more, they're still figuring things out. They're doing internships, work experience. So you don't have as much job security. So I think it's a very difficult time for young people, but then also quite difficult for elderly people. I've seen a lot of support they're trying to give to elderly people who are going to be even alone for Christmas, because they're shielding and they can't meet with other people. So it's a very difficult time, but I like that Sarah was so positive about that it brings us all together as, you know, human beings. And I think it is in like the darkest times that then, you know, the strength of human beings comes out, because it is when we're faced with a stressor that we're forced to, you know, kind of rise up. And I feel like we're all doing the best we can. And at the end of the day, I think that's all you can expect from people. But yeah, that's my general thoughts.
It's difficult. I mean, you've got all kinds of. I mean, COVID anxiety, is that a real thing, or is that a word I've just made up? I'll let you decide. But we're all kind of. Somebody comes to your door with a parcel. They pass you the parcel. You wipe that parcel down, and then you open it and you wash your hands. How long's that going to go on for? Is the children going to grow up seeing that anxiety over everyday living manifest itself in how they grow and how they nurture life and how they see it happen? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but it's kind of worrying. I mean, lockdown. I did a blog. I did a video log. The first lockdown, and it pretty much went along the lines of everything's great, everything's great, everything's great, everything's great. It's rubbish. I don't like this anymore. I've had enough. Get me out of here. Everything's great again. And I don't know whether this lockdown's going to follow the same pattern, because my moods go up and down, and when they go down, they go really quite bad, and just anxiety about. I remember the first time it happened, anxiety about doing the shows and things like that, being able to work, seeing my children, extra pressures that you don't have in normal life. It's this COVID living.
Yeah. There's so many things that we're having to get used to as well. Like even with masks, I was looking the other day at some photos from 4 years ago, and you know, we used to eat and walk around and masks were not even remotely in our, you know, consciousness. But now we have an entirely new kind of way of living. Before, I still used hand sanitizer, but I didn't use it with the frequency that I do now. And then like even with the NHS app, I was recently told to self-isolate, but I've just come out of it. But I felt like it was a bug. There was a little bit of a situation there, but like that gave me so much more anxiety, even though I know when I go outside, I'm at risk at meeting people. But when you see it on the app, it kind of changes your perspective. And it makes you more afraid than if someone were to tell you in person or call you up and say, isolate. So that's another interesting, that was something that I thought was interesting in terms of the difference in sending someone a text message or an alert on your phone saying you need to isolate, you've been exposed to someone with coronavirus, as opposed to calling someone up and being like, this person from this particular place you went to got
so
tested.
It doesn't tell you what the reason is. It just tells you got to isolate.
Yeah, it didn't show up for me. And then I thought for me the biggest question was where, because I wanted to know so I could tell like my housemates and just make sure that anyone I came into contact with or anyone I know that went to the same place kind of thing would also know to self-isolate. But that uncertainty, I think, always has been, when you think about anxiety and stress, uncertainty is a big cause of that. And then even with loneliness, I think it's interesting to think about how the characteristics of lockdown and the pandemic are linked so closely to mental illness. Because even with loneliness or isolation, they in itself are not a mental illness, but you become lonely or you get isolated because of mental illness, and you also are at risk for mental illness and episodes of, depression and anxiety when you experience isolation. So there's this cyclical relationship, and that's the case for both loneliness as well as uncertainty. And the healthcare system and the mental health care systems were already overloaded before the pandemic. So the consequences, it's going to be really interesting to see how they deal with the added strain that's going to come out of this, because we're trying to look after the economy. We're trying to keep the R value down and keep the deaths low and keep the infection rate low. But what about the other impacts? At the end of the day, I think it's not just physical health that matters. When you deal with human beings, mental health matters quite a lot, and it impacts physical health as well. And it needs to be a priority, and it needs to be considered in both real time, like right now response, as well as future plans.
Yeah,
Totally agree.
yeah, well said, Rose.
I'm hoping that the system, not only for the physical body, but obviously our mental well-being and health, will get some, or indeed 100% more focus. It should be happening now. It's going to be slow, but it will come to a pimple head and it will explode. And if there's nothing in there ready, then I don't know. I'm just hoping that it will put it on a pedestal with a big neon sign saying we need more focus on mental health as well as the physical. So it might push this forward further.
That's a reflection of what's been going on in society over the past decade, I suppose. Perhaps not even a decade, perhaps the last 3 years. The way that society say mental health's like just as important. I mean, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, well, certainly when I first started experiencing things, there's no help at all. It wasn't recognised. Not even your doctors had properly recognised it, and it's getting more and more recognised now. There's new techniques, the holistic therapies that are coming to the fore, and there's I mean therapeutic tapping. I mean, talk about that for a second. The fact that you can use a technique like that to help manage, and not manage, but help alleviate the symptoms of anxiety, to help you concentrate and focus. These are all new things to us. I mean, Susan, you're the expert on this. I mean, do you concur with that, or?
Absolutely. And isn't it wonderful that there are all these fantastic simple techniques where actually once you've been shown it and you've had a go yourself, there you have it. You can take it away with you and use it anywhere at any time. And I'd just like to add upon what Sarah, you were saying just then about focus. We need more focus on mental health. Well, actually, we need more focus on the whole spectrum. There is so little focus on it other than constant scaremongering, and instead, actually, to add to what we're saying here, that uncertainty. Well, what actually helps to diffuse uncertainty? Information, proper scientifically based data, evidential case study data, which is out there, but it's being hidden from the public mainstream media and hidden, blocked, call it whatever. And this is my concern, is that there is more a disenfranchisement of people going on here, as opposed to lifting them, supporting them and boosting them and showing them that very simply, this is, whilst, okay, if we have to have a lockdown situation, but this is what you can be doing. This is how you can look after yourselves, and it's not woo-woo,
Oh, even though I like that word.
This is straightforward stuff, to calm and soothe yourself, and more information, public information from the government sites that actually provide this, instead of thrashing you with that whip of fear. If you go and do this, then this will happen. Instead, we need to have more understanding provided to us, more information which is supportive. I need to stop there because I'll get my high horse, and that's so.
You are right though. There's if you provide people with the right information, they can make their own decision on how to react to certain stimuli or situations. And what you're getting at the minute, while you're just getting absolutely bombarded with information. I don't know whether I'm not saying the quality of the information is right or wrong, but it's just sheer bombardment. I did a mind map a few weeks ago, try and just say, I was trying to put it into paper, what is going off in my head about the whole COVID anxiety situation. And one of it was just sheer bombardment. So I've switched off the news apps on my phone, and I don't look at the news anymore. My wife tells me if there's anything that I need to know about.
Yeah,
me too.
Yeah, as well.
Does she phone you?
No, I've turned it off. I ask my husband, I'll go, what's going off in the world? Because I don't watch the news either.
Well, I've always thought that the news tends to be very much about panic and creating, chaos. And I've not watched the news in maybe like 5-6 years. I've like completely cut that out of my life. So I do get panicky messages from my mom instead.
Yeah, I get those too.
About everything that happens. So, I mean, it's still just as effective, but it's less because it's not the same news story from each, agency that publishes it. But it's just my mom saying, be careful, this is happening. Are you okay? Are you alive? Are you staying at home?
Yeah.
And they're bound to, aren't they? We're all the same as parents. We're looking out for our kids naturally. Yes. Yes. Yeah. And yeah.
Yeah, I would add to what Susan was saying. I completely agree, and I would also say that there's a lot of really good resources out there, and people and support and inspiration. Social media can be an unruly, can be evil at times as well. But I tell you what, there's such good stuff out there as well. So, and I always promise myself that I laugh at one thing every day, even if it's a meme. I don't care what it is. Might be a video, an old TV like A-Team I was watching the other day. Anything that gives me reminiscence or makes me laugh or is a distraction, then if I can just give one piece of advice today, it's just have one laugh at one thing every day. Oh God.
Definitely, like, it's important to allow technology to work for us rather than like us work for it and just get caught up in it, because it brings, when you think even about the isolation, I've seen like so many memes about, imagine being in lockdown in 2003 when all of us had the Nokia phone, like the brick phone, that one snake game in it. So like we have so much more now to even just occupy our minds, but also in terms of social interaction. You can call your family members and see them, whereas before you may not even have been able to hear their voices, let alone even see their faces. But now we have so much, and it's accessible to everyone. It's on every, because most people have a smartphone. you just need to click a button and your mom's there. You click a button and your, dad's there. It's just like you have that. But I think it comes back to that point of like, we're conditioned to be negative through what we see in the media and what we're exposed to constantly. So we don't tend to focus on the positives, the positive things that we do have. And I think that's a shift that you need to make a conscious choice, because it doesn't really fit in with, consumerism, capitalism, none of that. It goes against the grain almost. But when you do that, the impact on your mental health, physical health, and all other areas can be immense. And it's kind of the main tip is just if you are positive and you think positive, you'll find the strength and the resources that you need to get through all of this.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what it'd be like for somebody properly isolated. A person who lives on their own. I just can't imagine that. See, I struggle at times with. I've been working at home since February, March, and I'm sat at my desk now, and I've been working. And my wife goes to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, and she doesn't come in until 6 o'clock at night, and I'm just left on my own all day with the dog, and I have no interaction other than the odd telephone call with any other humans, and I find that terrible. So I can't imagine what it'd be like not having either my dog or that interaction with somebody to talk to. You don't even need to talk to someone. It might just be somebody sitting next to you while you read a book.
Yeah.
It's just having the sense of somebody else being there comfort you.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's an innate human need.
Absolutely.
That's hardwired into us.
Yeah.
We're not great on our own.
No.
Some choose to be, and they'll go out and live in Alaska on their own and live off the land, and that suits some people because they watch the program. But for the most of us, we are pack animals at the end of the day. We rely on social interaction for our well-being.
And then the kids come home from school and you wish they were back at school after about 10 minutes.
Yeah,
well, we can be selective.
And the interesting thing is also the choice, because the people who go off to live in Alaska, and I spent a year when I was doing a work experience and living on my own. So I had my own flat and there was nobody else there. And I worked from very early to very late. So I came home too late to go anywhere outside. So my days were like outside of work. I didn't really have any social interaction. And that was actually quite calming to come home to an empty house, just because I could just really rest and relax. Whereas it becomes different when it's forced on you. And like, because even some days, some weekends, you want to just stay at home. You don't want to go outside because you've been spending the whole week getting ready and dealing with people. But then when you're in lockdown and you can't go outside, it becomes an entirely different thing. But it's interesting. It's like we always want what we can't have kind of thing. Again,
yeah. It's like any addiction or food or anything. If we said you're not allowed to do that, the kid in us goes, "Oh, yes, I am." And that is what makes us human.
Yeah, it's stopping me. It's spontaneity, isn't it? Just as you may be driving back from a meeting or whatever, and thinking, oh, it's a bit late now, I'll just pop into the pub or the cafe or whatever for meet up with some friends. Or so it's I use the expression, I feel as I've had my wings clipped, because that's what I like to do. I'm quite spontaneous naturally with with those sort of last minute decisions, which is exciting to be able to do that. But I think what I think we're all agreeing here is that it is we are very social creatures, and the majority of people absolutely need to have that contact and that physical contact, and so something that in our other sessions that I talk about is to give yourself a hug, because sometimes if there isn't somebody there, just when you need that hug from them, then do give yourself a hug, because it does make a difference. It's like in that moment you're really honoring yourself. It's like, I'm real, I am worth it, I am valuable, and I deserve this. And yeah, it's just, these are the very basic human things. And as you said, Carl, it really is a human need. It's recognized as one of the 6 basic human needs.
And that's why people are struggling.
Yes, yeah. And it massively impacts on the immune system to not be able to touch someone. I mean, people literally die of not being able to touch someone. Sadly, it's that is a truth. So this is why we have to get creative and find other ways at times like this to soothe ourselves. And one thing's for sure, folks, nothing stays the same for long. So we're always in a state of change. So things keep changing, and that is a really good positive for us to remind ourselves of.
Yeah. Didn't somebody once say nothing changes if nothing changes? Or something like that.
I'm still thinking about it. I'm trying to process it.
Then that's amazing. I think somebody said it, but yeah, absolutely.
Well,
I think that in itself is a comfort for all of us. With that uncertainty, at least we can be certain that this will end, and things will be better, and we'll come out stronger. I think it's bringing out the positives, because it's really highlighting the negatives, because we can really see it in a very ugly way, because we're all focusing on each other now because we have nothing else to focus on. And then I think humans, when they actually face things, they make a right decision or the good decision. So I think that's the thing that we've all been like dealing with through fairy tales and everything. Good triumphs evil. And I think that's in some sense, because of, it's almost conditioning from childhood, and it's a good conditioning, at least. So that's there for sure.
Yeah. And history demonstrates that, actually, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think we end it there on a positive, guys. I think we all recognise the fact that we're humans. We need interaction. If we don't get it, it's going to affect our mental health. Thank you everybody for tuning in today. We'll come back to you with another exciting topic to discuss. And if you've got any topics that you would like us to discuss, send them in. Let us know what you want us to talk about. And if you want to get involved and perhaps even talk about it yourself, let us know.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
We wouldn't have met, would we, Carl? We wouldn't have met if it wasn't for what's happened this year.
No, I think it's brilliant. And I'm looking forward to getting out again, so I'll give you a big fat hug again.
Yay!
Right, take care, guys.
All right. Thank you for tuning in,
everyone.
Peace out.